Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 217 of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. On the show today, I have Medha Bhaskar, who is back for a second time on the podcast. Now, if you have heard Medha's previous conversation, you know we had a wonderful time getting nerdy about yoga, and we had a conversation about teacher trainings in the previous one. In this episode, Medha and I talk about the Hatha Yoga Pradeepika and specifically how to be a good student, the method prescribed in the Hatha Yoga Pradeepika. And Medha does a beautiful job of breaking down the two elements, the Badhaka Tattvas, the what not to do, and the Sadhaka Tattvas, the to do practices. So, in this episode, you get to hear the structural framework of how to approach this entire practice. Medha actually calls it the principle and the process. And that's a beautiful way of looking at it. She talks about how sometimes we jump to the process too quickly without spending enough time on the principle and understanding how the principles are to be applied before we get to the process. So I think you will find this conversation extremely grounding, clarifying, and insightful. And the Badhaka Tattvas, the what not to do, are supported by what to do. As always, all the details of our guests and how you can connect with Medha will be mentioned in our podcast show notes, which are found at letstalk.yoga/listen. I will include all the details there. But please remember to rate and review this podcast. If you get benefit from the conversations we have, please remember a review, a 5-star rating, and sharing this with someone goes a long way. All our guests, they stay up late to do these conversations. Sometimes they wake up early and start their day a little sooner. So you get to learn all these different elements of yoga. So a simple rating and a review will go a long way. I have one more time sensitive announcement before we get to Medha's conversation. And that is the yoga retreat in southern Italy is happening end of September, September 25th to October 3rd. This is a week-long yoga retreat for yoga nerds and yoga teachers. And it is called Prana and Presence. And I would love to have you join me in September. The details for that are in the podcast description as well as in our show notes. Now, here's my conversation about how to be a good student with Medha Bhaskar. Hi, Medha. Welcome back to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast.
Thank you, Adu. So happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to always chat with you. So we are discussing something from the Hatha Yoga Pradeepika. Now, before we jump into today's conversation, can you explain to us what is the Hatha Yoga Pradeepika? How should one approach understanding the yoga in this?
This is a great question. So, Hatha Yoga Pradeepika is a text which was written around 11th century by this yogi called Swatmarama. And Swatmarama, in the first couple of sutras, talks about how there is so much yoga happening in the world and how he wants to throw light on what is actually yoga and what is not. So it is, in one sense, the context that he lays out is that I am throwing light on this. So that's why Pradeepika. Deepa means light. So Pradeepika is to throw light on, to shine light on, to clarify. So it is a yoga manual. So there are a lot of texts in yoga. I'm sure, when we do a simple Google search, you'll find that there are so many texts. There is the Bhagavad Gita, there is Yoga Sutras, there is Yoga Vasishta, and Hatha Yoga Pradeepika, there is Gheranda Samhita, and so many more, because this is a practice that has a 5,000-year history. Right? So many people have connected with yoga, understood it, practiced it, accomplished great things with this practice, and about it. So it is very important to understand what are the important things to study and what are not. And Hatha Yoga definitely comes among one of the important texts. I would call it more like a manual than a philosophical exposition. I mean, there are concepts and philosophies in that, but it is very, very much practice-oriented.
So, in the grand scheme of studying these yoga texts, right? And a lot of these texts are not pick up and read like a novel from cover to cover. So, would you say that Hatha Yoga Pradipika is a beginner level text, or is it something that should come after several layers of exploring other texts and parts of yoga?
I think here it is very important to zoom out a little bit and
Mhm.
understand the process of yoga education, right? Currently, what we all define as yoga, and I think that this is one of the misunderstandings that we carry because it is so difficult to sort of define yoga and understand so many concepts that are not very normal in our everyday process of life, right?
Mhm.
So, what we start doing is we start designing yoga as the process of doing yoga, right? We say yoga is asana,
Mhm.
yoga is pranayama, yoga is meditation, yoga is mindfulness.
Mhm.
This is really the how to do the yoga
Mhm.
and not what are we actually doing,
Mhm.
right? There are principles and there are processes.
Mhm.
And very often we enter this study with the process. And
Mhm.
I feel like we don't adequately focus on what the principles are. Why are you doing? What are you doing?
Mhm.
Where does this lead? How does it change you?
Mhm.
This is where having a construct of the yoga practice is very important,
Okay.
right? And there are essential texts which talk about this. For example, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras
Mhm.
talks about both the principles and the processes. But even the processes that Patanjali talks about is very, very essential, very principle like.
Mhm. Mhm.
Patanjali talks about asana in three sutras out of 196.
Mhm.
And he never lays down, what are the asanas you have to do, what do you have to prepare for, none of those. He says, Stiram Sukham Asanam,
Mhm.
Prayatna Shaithalya Ananta Samapatibhyam, and Tato Dvandvana Vigata.
Mhm.
Asana is a posture which in which you can cultivate steadiness and comfort.
Mhm.
Or just another way to say it is when a posture becomes steady and comfortable, it becomes an asana.
Mhm.
And what does that lead to? You put so much effort to get to effortlessness.
Mhm.
And once that effortlessness comes in, what happens? There is a samapati or an equanimity.
Mhm.
And that equanimity leads to the duality in your mind settling down. So these are the only three things he says.
Mhm.
Highly essential, highly principle based,
Mhm.
very little about the process.
Mhm.
Right? It doesn't say, you know, put your mat this way, practice that way,
There's
Trikonasana
no
involves
technique.
this asana. Yes.
Mhm.
So obviously you cannot study Yoga Sutras just by itself because then it doesn't make sense. It becomes abstract.
Mhm.
But if you're focusing a lot on the concrete
Mhm.
without understanding that this is what I'm actually trying to do,
Mhm.
then there is a fear or there is a issue with too much narrowness.
Mhm.
And I feel that that's where our present yoga practice as a comment on the whole world and the way it is approaching yoga is.
Mhm.
Right? It is too concrete. It needs a little bit of abstraction into what are the essential things we're trying to do.
There. Mhm. Mhm.
So the kind of yoga texts that we have are therefore twofold. One
Okay.
which are essential
Mhm.
and the other which are concrete. Hatha Yoga comes into the more manual based practice technique. What are the things to consider, how to do the practice kind of text, kind
Mhm.
of scripture.
Mhm.
Yoga Sutras comes into the essential scripture,
Mhm.
right? So as a beginner or as somebody who starts looking at yoga practice, in fact, I don't even say beginners because I think yoga teachers, the more you actually go into this, understanding the principle more and more, your process just becomes better and better and better.
So true. Mhm.
Because this is not like you said, cover to cover thing. You can't read it once and say, ha, I've understood it. It
Mhm.
has to be exemplified in life. It has to be exemplified in your own mind's processes. It has to
Mhm.
be exemplified on the mat.
Mhm.
It has to be exemplified in your teaching.
Mhm.
And so you keep going back to the principle because that's literally your fundamental construct, your framework within which yoga operates and becomes effective.
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So I constantly tell my students, and I think this is the process that I follow as well, where I keep going back to define what am I doing?
Mm.
Why am I doing it? What does it lead to?
Mhm.
Because with that construct, the how
Mhm.
becomes more relevant, more
Absolutely.
applicable.
Mhm. Mhm. I like to think of it as something your principle and process. I like to think of it as if you understand the why, the how becomes easier to stay with.
Yes.
Without the why, then the how, don't go to the how to do this. Understand why you are doing this. So I really appreciate you bringing up this principle and process. I think there is a gap, right? We have to condition our mindset as teachers who go into sharing yoga, as students who go into sharing yoga, because yoga is not just some, like, you can teach mathematics. I mean, maybe you can. I cannot teach mathematics. Okay, it's not my skill. But those are external subjects. You can use logic. You can teach in a certain way, but yoga it informs how you live. So I think there is that many layers of nuances built in. And I always share with teachers that your mindset is more important than, don't go to what am I learning. First, let's talk about mindset. And that mindset is crucial. So that's how you will define what you learn and how you learn it. So how do we understand what is the, now I'm doing air quotes, but ideal mindset, or what are the characteristics of a great student who's trying to study yoga?
Uh, this is a wonderful question because I think that the more we talk about it, the easier it becomes to say, how do I bring this into a space where my my mind expands into a bigger construct of why to do yoga,
Mm.
right? It's literally like you're culturing the soil to plant the seed, right?
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
think we don't adequately do that in yoga practice
Absolutely.
because, you get on your mat and then you are going, going, going. And also with the access to so much information and so many courses and so many specialized topics that you speak about, you
Mhm,
don't have adequately the kind of preparation that you need, which sort of integrates everything that you're learning.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
But that is the essential skill of a student, right? You need to know that whatever you're learning has to fit in together. The dots have to connect to create a picture.
Mm,
And this is where the qualities that you practice over and over again, like it's a skill that you practice with yourself.
mhm.
And the more you do that, it's like you're creating a system for learning.
Yes.
And you're not randomly, sporadically picking up random things which feel convenient on a good day. You pick up this and then you forget about it. And then
Mhm.
that does not lead to too many things.
True. And it's not about showing up. It's about how you are showing up. Something I have started this past year, and in all teacher trainings, is to ask people, is to ask the students, is what is the mindset in which you have arrived, without judgment. Even in asana classes, like, are you scattered? Are you centered? Are you mentally full? Are you tired, distracted? Notice it. Because then that's going to, in some form, impact how you are going to learn, and we can reset it. We can be intentional about it. We can reset it. But if you don't even know came to class completely scattered, then so taking that pause and being like, label it without judgment. It's not to make you feel bad, but it's to make you aware of, it's not showing up that matters, it's how you are showing up. Because this is not just something external you learn, it's an internal thing that shows up externally.
Absolutely. This is where I think also we have to be very honest with ourselves about what level of practice we're doing, right? Then we start the practice. Then showing up is the main thing. Because there are 100 reasons why you don't want to show up.
Mm.
But very soon, when
Mm.
yoga starts making sense in our lives, we go past it, but we don't adequately hold ourselves to the standard where we say, oh, wait, let me see how I'm showing up now.
Mm. Mhm.
Right? This is literally what happened to me when I first started doing yoga. I had a pretty bad lifestyle. Like I couldn't sleep. I was coming out of a pretty intense experience. And I would always wake up in the morning. My class was at 5 a.m. So I would probably go to sleep at 4:30
Oh my gosh.
and
Okay.
15 minutes of sleep. And I would, when my alarm rang, wake up and I would text my teacher
Mhm.
saying, you know what, I just can't make it today. I have a headache, I have a fever, because I had those things in 15 minutes of sleep. What do you have?
Of
Right?
course. Yeah.
So he would respond to me when he wanted to, and he wouldn't when he didn't. And then one day I realized that if I don't show up, what can my teacher do for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I said, I'll come back after my yoga class and sleep,
Yes.
but I will just go. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the day that everything shifted for me. Because one day, if I could stand up to my own mind, the next day it became easier.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, you did it yesterday when you were feeling all of those things. Yeah, today you've got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, because I was able to decide to just show up,
Mm-hmm.
I started saying, well, anyway, I'm showing up. Why don't I prepare to show up? Why don't okay, I can't control my sleep because I'm not able to sleep. So let me just control my food.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
Let me not sleep after my yoga class and sort of push it for one day and see if I fall asleep or faster.
Mm.
Maybe I pay attention to what I'm watching before I go to sleep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And slowly and steadily, I mean, it took a couple of months, but slowly and steadily, a lot of things that I never really thought that one yoga class could fix started to fix.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of this happens if you engage with the process for you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is foundational in this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of process, what is the process in the Hatha Yoga Pradeepika to be on track to be this type of student?
Swatma Rama talks about two primary things.
Okay.
He says there are certain actions, behaviors, attitudes that if you follow, it will diminish your practice. So please be aware of it.
So, the do not
And then
do
there's,
first.
yes,
Mm.
please avoid these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about let's positively inculcate these actions, attitudes, and behaviors to nourish the practice.
Mm-hmm.
So these are called Badhaka Tattvas, the don't do's, and the Sadhaka Tattvas, which are please do.
Mm.
Right? And it is very interesting that, you know, there is so much of attitudinal correction that all of these, you know, yogis talk about, because they say that that's literally the field in which your yoga practice happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he talks about 6 things that diminish the practice.
Okay.
He says, Atyahara, Prajalpa, and Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, Janasangha, and Laulya. 6 things. Right? Atyahara means overeating. But in the actual sense of this, it means overconsumption or indulgence in consuming things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you say
Right?
things,
So,
are you saying beyond food?
absolutely. Just the same way that, you
Like
know,
sensory
eating too
consumption?
much. Yes. It's very easy to define it as overeating of food, but it is also a good way to understand that if you eat too much food, what happens? You become dull.
Tamasic, yes.
So sensory consumption also makes us feel the same way. We just don't realize it.
Yes. Yes. Because physically you can stuff your stomach to a certain degree and then your body will send you signals. But when you are with your phone and your eyes and your ears, and there's no, I think we know how to numb that. And we know how to operate despite of that. So yeah.
Yes. And in this social media frenzy that we have going right now, it is, I mean, the moment we get tired or the moment we get distracted or the moment we get bored, the first thing we reach out to is our phones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're not really conscious of what we're consuming, how much we're consuming, to what extent. I mean, it is not designed to make you stop or put boundaries to it.
So true. Mm-hmm.
So, literally, the first thing that diminishes yoga practice, because yoga is an energy practice.
Mm-hmm.
Energy has to come together. It's a concentration practice.
Mm.
And Atyahara is the first thing that takes this energy, which is concentrated, and disperses it.
Mm.
And that naturally leads to prayasa, which is the second characteristic that diminishes the practice. He says prayasa is exertion,
Mm.
right? Doing too much, not understanding how much, where your boundaries are,
Yes.
not understanding where you need to stop and take care of you.
Mm.
And I think yoga teachers are pretty guilty of this, not consciously, but doing too much in terms of classes. Because I think we forget also sometimes that this is an energy exchange. Again, because we're stuck with the process and not the principle.
Mm.
Teaching requires making space for a person.
Mm.
And this making space is actually an energy consuming task.
So true.
If everything in your life is going well, it's very easy to make space for somebody else. But we're not perfect people.
Mm-hmm.
And that expectation is also not very fair on us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to sort of say that I need to take care of me in order to show up better for whatever else I'm doing is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But this becomes very difficult because the boundary is not for others.
Mm-hmm.
The boundary is simply for your own self.
Mm. It's true. It's so
Right?
true. Mm-hmm.
This could also be learning too much without actually taking the time to integrate it.
Oh, yes. That's a big one.
Constantly attacking yourself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with new ideas, new concepts, and holding yourself without actually understanding.
Isn't that also the first one? Like consumption, like constantly,
Yes.
like taking more yoga in without that integration. Mm-hmm.
So what happens as a result is indigestion of the mental sort. Right? There's too much. All of these ideas are attacking each other, warring with each other, conflicting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, it becomes very difficult to know what you're all about and what you're really trying to build in your own journey.
So true. Because it's like no number of certifications will matter if you don't know how to apply it. So you could be going to the best teachers and you're literally that unripe fruit, right? And you could be sitting in those rooms and learning all of the nerves and connective tissue and all these other philosophical concepts. But if there's no space to sit with it and integrate it, and like your story earlier, right? You were like, if I'm showing up, I might as well show up nicely, properly, well prepared. That integration is a big one.
Yes, yes. And that is literally the difference between a good teacher and a great one, eventually. Right? If you have faced this and you have applied it to yourself and you've understood, got the thread of it,
Yes.
then it's very easy to do that to others as well.
I also think, just jumping off what you said, when you've caught the thread of it, right? And you've started to live it, integrate it, break it down, then you're able to simplify it and you're able to bring it to whoever is in front of you. Otherwise, you're talking of something that is not really rooted and it's a little out there. And you should be able to simplify. I always say this, the best teachers will teach it to you in the simplest form. And it is when somebody is still hasn't applied it, they'll be circling around a little more. So yeah.
That actually leads to the next. It says excessive talkativeness, prajalpa.
Which is what you and I do. Do it with each other.
Communicating without actually saying much is what Satha Rama is talking about.
Oh, okay. No, that right? You and I don't do. Okay, jokes apart.
I think we're more chatterboxes that there are so many things that we're interested in. But like what he's talking about is speaking without really talking. You know? And this ties exactly back to where, what you were saying about circling around.
Yes.
And a lot of our communication is really just that because we don't understand what we're saying.
So
right?
True.
And
so
in
true.
order to, it's like we're talking to ourselves by explaining it to other people. But
We're trying to make
it
sense of it
becomes,
in that moment.
yeah. And as yoga practitioners and teachers, it is very, very important to sort of let the energy of what you're learning gather for it to make that transformative leap in your own mind and in your own life. Because it can't just happen in the mind, it has to happen in your practice also.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
And talking dilutes it.
mhm.
Right? It doesn't mean you should get into a mauna vrata or like a vow of silence or
Okay.
not talk about anything. But having a sense of what am I communicating with you? Is this what I really mean?
Mhm.
Do I need to engage in this interaction? Because talking also sort of takes energy out of you,
Yes,
right?
it definitely drains you. Yes.
And if it is a draining kind of activity and you engage with it too much, then going back to Hatha Yoga being a concentration practice,
Mhm,
it dilutes that idea.
mhm, mhm. So, clarifying questions for you. Here, when we say, excessive talking, are we referring to this as in the yoga space, like teachers, we got to not just keep talking about something, learn to be that filter and not have that excessively. uh, and are we also looking at it outside of that space, like in my life, in my social circles? Is this also that, where we are, no, this is not that.
No, absolutely. I think so
Okay.
because you cannot be a yogi in the yoga class. You have to be
Fair,
a person
fair,
who
fair.
is a yogi, as you said. It is
Okay.
a lifestyle that you build, right? This is your it's a personality honing practice.
Understood. Okay. That was my clarifying question. Then, does it also mean it's a practice of boundaries with yourself inside the yoga room and outside, right? Because,
Absolutely. And it is very nourishing to oneself. And it's scary when you think about when you're starting the practice. But over a period of time, your communication feels meaningful.
mm,
It
mhm,
feels essential. It
mm,
feels like what you're saying carries weight.
mhm, mhm. So true. So true. And something that I learned from some teacher, I sadly don't remember who, but he would always after class leave in silence. He would not talk to anybody after class. And I remember, like, apparently that was a recommendation from PKS Iyengar. Like, after class, don't engage in too much communicate, like, hold on to that, energy you've gathered in your practice. And today it is still something I recommend to students to do. Drive home in silence. No phone, no talking, no podcast, like nothing. Just go home. If you want to carry the effect of the practice a little longer, go in silence. And this reminds me of that. Maybe it's not directly that, but it reminds me of that.
It is very, very much related to this. And yeah, and in my YTD 300, this was one of the rules, right? Because we would be feeling so many things and we'd be talking about so many philosophies in class.
Mhm.
My teacher had made it a strong rule not to let all our half formed ideas interact with each other and create a mess.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's literally what happens if you think about it a little dispassionately in our own heads, right? Because when we don't take the time to process what it is that we're actually feeling and express it when it is half formed.
Yes, and it's confusion, right? That's you're
Yeah.
talking about your confusion. I remember even Bharat would have us on Mauna. The moment you walked into the gates of the Shala, you were on silence till you left.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it back then, but it totally made sense many years later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that leads us to the next one, which says Niyamagraha. Niyama means rules.
Mhm.
Agraha is to put yourself into the, in Kannada we say chowkattu, right? Like the
Ah,
boundary or
mm,
the strict confines of these rules.
okay.
So what that does, I mean, this sounds a little contradictory, right? Because, yoga is a discipline practice. So then, like, how do you not follow the discipline? Or why is Swatmarama saying, don't be pedantic about the rules that you follow? It's simply that if you sort of take the rule out of context, it doesn't make sense. So this is not a prescriptive practice. You cannot follow rules based on a prescription. Could be something as simple as I will wake up every day at 4 a.m. That cannot happen in isolation. You have to consider your entire life. Now, you build a life that makes waking up at 4 a.m. possible. That's good.
Yes.
But if you don't do that and you just say, I will follow this rule, then that takes a lot of energy to maintain and balance. Then you have
It's
very
not
little energy
sustainable.
left for
Yeah.
your yoga practice.
Mhm.
Yeah. What it leads to is guilt and shame,
Mhm.
and that is not helping anybody.
Mhm.
Guilt and shame are one of those, I mean, are two of those emotions that sort of really take away all the energy that you have. They're
Mhm.
all consuming, almost like they possess you.
Mhm.
And whatever progress you've made, you start to doubt it, you start to question it, you start to worry about who you are and what are you doing in this practice.
Mhm.
That is really not the point.
Mhm.
So the more strict you are without reflection about rules. So the way I like to think about it is don't follow rules, follow practices.
Mhm.
So on days that you're not able to show up in the way that you want to, according to these prescribed rules, the moment you convert it into practice, it becomes more reflective. It becomes more,
Yes.
you start understanding why did that not happen? What can I do to fix it? It becomes a more a participative process
Mhm.
and it's easier to work with.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
And there is another thing that happens, right? When you follow rules very strictly and you're putting so much effort to hold on to these rules, without knowing, you also start to expect people around you to follow them.
Mhm. 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 Or you'll put pressure on
And
them to help you get to this. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
and that's a bit tedious also.
Mhm. True. 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 I like how you took that 4 a.m. example of if you make it rigid, it's not sustainable. You have to look at this is goes back to what you started with, right? If this is where I want to go, there's context and how do I arrange a few different things. You said it differently, but it makes I like that example you took of 4 a.m. I remember a student walked up to me once in from the 200 hour and said, should I be waking up at Brahma Muhurta every day? And I was like, what time do you go to sleep? It was like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I was like, please don't.
Yeah.
No matter what Brahma Muhurta can do, you in that state where you've slept for 2, 3 hours, there's no point. Don't cling to the concept of Brahma Muhurta, of waking up at 4 a.m. and think that not, everything else has to be set. So you effortlessly, joyfully wake up in Brahma Muhurta. Not you might wake up for 3 weeks. After that, it goes away. So set everything
And
else.
there is an equal and opposite force, right?
Mm.
Because if you're sleeping at 12, 1, 2, and waking up at 4, you're operating on 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Mm.
Unless you can put your boundary not at 4 a.m. or waking up at 4 a.m., but put your boundary to going to sleep at 8 p.m.
Yes. Mhm. I see
This
what
is
you
what
mean.
we don't think.
I see what you mean. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think of that. Yeah. 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 I would have said do that same practice at 8 a.m. Okay. But
8 p.m.
I like your approach better. Is there anything else?
And that's difficult. Yes, so there are two more. So he says also Jana Sangha, over
Mm.
socialization.
Oh.
Because this is a toughie as well. Because, if you are socializing with people who are on your path, who understand your context, who understand what you're doing and support you in that, it is okay. But
Yes.
what happens very often is that our path is very different from a lot of people around us.
Mhm.
They don't have context to what we're doing,
Correct. Mm.
right? And also, it is not, to put it very bluntly, it is not their business to understand what we are doing.
Yes.
They have their own paths to figure out,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So it is very important for us to understand that these boundaries or to sort of stay within themselves
Mm.
because you're the only one who has a view of your path and process.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
now this could lead to a whole bunch of things, right? Like when you over socialize, you're looking for a kind of validation because it's a lonely path.
It is a lonely path. It's true. And it also goes back to that talking too much, right? Just
Yeah.
an external drain. It affects your sleep. It has repercussions. And it is a private practice. It is a lonely path. It reminds me, I used to have a student a couple of years ago in teacher training. And he came to do the teacher training, was excited about it. But every weekend I would hear, from him how he was missing something else. His friends are out having fun. His wife is doing something, and the sun is shining. He should have been hiking, but he's here. He didn't mean it in like a bad, but it was FOMO. It was FOMO of I want to be there, but I also want to be here. I was having another conversation recently with somebody from the 300 hour, and she was saying how, she was like, something came up, and I was like, yeah, at some point you've got to log out and make space for other things in your life. And the student was telling me, like, oh, it's easy for you to say. I was like, hey, no, it's not that. I also work. I have 3 different jobs. But at some level, you have to realize that you can't be there everywhere 24/7. You can't be at work, logged into emails, trying to be there all the time in the fear of somebody else is going to go ahead of me, right? At the same time, you can't be in these type of practices and try to hold on to everything here. We sometimes, what I'm trying to say is, sometimes we think Janasangha is social things. It can also be work type of things where you're
Yeah.
constantly plugged in. Yes, you're constantly plugged in. After a point, you're going to burn if you're constantly plugged into something. So that FOMO, that fear of missing out, it shows up in different ways.
Absolutely. And what it also does is that it opens up your practice for comment.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very so one of the first things that I learned from my teacher was your practice is between you and yourself primarily. The
Mm-hmm.
only person who's allowed to give you input is your teacher.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've heard that because we have some similar background culturally and how we've studied yoga. And I think it is one of the best things is, like, I don't share largely what happens in my world in yoga with anybody other than my own peers. And, none of my friends really understand. I don't even know if they care at some level about
Yeah.
the layers of how is your mind, like what are the layers of the mind? And it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're.
Yeah. So I think it sort of ties back to everything that we've spoken before this.
Mhm.
It ties back to Atyahara, it ties back to Prayasa, it ties back to Prajalpa, it ties back to Niyamagraha. All of these things come in Jana Sangha as well.
Janasangha can also be family,
Yes.
right?
That's a
Like,
toughie.
yeah, Janasangha, because, and I'm seeing these examples play out as I'm in a couple of trainings right now. I can see, especially for mothers, right? To be like, I also think, at some level, moms also overgive. I don't know, do we have overgiving in this list? Probably not, but
You can't help it, right? When you're
correct.
constantly in the company of people, it is
Yes.
so difficult. I mean, you have to be a really, I mean, it's perceived as nasty. It's perceived as, oh, look at her. She has so much attitude, for example. Why can't you just do just this much? It's not just about that particular event or action, right? Like it is about an entire energy of how much you're willing to give.
Like somebody, in one training recently told me, right? Like she's in the training, but every few hours she'll go check her phone. Did her kids eat? These are grown up children. Okay. Did the kid eat? Did this? And she was saying, it's not them, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm the one clinging. They're fine. I'm the one clinging. And I feel sometimes like I'm stuck because I've put myself in this pattern. And
Yeah.
learning to not be like this is also part of my process. I was like, yeah.
I mean, she's well on her way to practice this now then. If she's found out this, that,
Mhm.
and And you see also the moment you start realizing your own faulty patterns,
Mhm.
the agency that you get, you feel so powerful because you
Mhm.
say, oh, I'm contributing to this. So maybe
Mhm.
if I don't, then so many things in my own life change.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because
That's the point of this.
her exact words were, by giving this much, not just to kids, to everybody, I'm suffering. Because we've been doing a
Yeah.
lot of suffering conversations, and it's like, I'm suffering. Like, I'm like, what we all have to find what we're suffering with to set that thing, like to set change. So it, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is great because the moment we realize these things, then, practicing these principles become very easy.
Mhm.
So I think Badhaka Tattvas is Swatmarama's way of sort of pointing out how to understand where you are losing energy.
Can I ask you one more question about Janasangha? Because I feel like Janasangha is more relevant today than it was maybe 50 years ago. Okay. So if can I extend Janasangha into two things here? Question for you. Is there, what are your thoughts on socializing with students beyond the yoga room? Becoming friends with your students, you know what I mean, like that side. That's one part of my question. Another part of my question for Janasangha is digital boundaries with people who you meet. Okay, what are your thoughts on this? It may be a little pulled out from Janasangha, but what are your
Oh
thoughts?
no, it's very relevant. I think
Okay.
this is the subject matter of Janasangha.
Mm.
So in terms of the teacher student boundary, I am a strict believer that you cannot be entirely friends with your
Me
students,
too. Mm. Mm.
right? Because it sort of takes away from the context of teacher student relationship. It's not.
Yes.
Over a period of time, the lack of boundaries becomes the reason that there is no learning happening,
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
right? So the more the students get to know you and your thought process and your practice, again, it becomes a bit of a comment on what you are doing instead of engaging with the idea for the idea's own sake.
Mm.
Now, I believe that a teacher student get into a teacher student relationship not because they like each other, but because there is a definitive purpose of moving forward. The
Mm.
teacher gains as much as the student
Yes.
in uncovering a principle,
Mm. Mhm.
sometimes more.
Mhm.
I constantly feel like it's my privilege to be there with my student, attacking a particular principle and deriving as much as I can.
Correct. You're learning with them. Mm. Mhm.
And the moment that it isn't in a sacred space of depersonalized engagement,
Mhm.
it becomes very difficult. It becomes corrupt. It becomes biased.
Mm. It also becomes
So,
diluted,
yes.
right? You're like, I'll not do this today. I'll go. They'll understand. Yeah. You blur those lines. I'm with you on that. Mhm.
So, in trying to uncover principle,
Mm.
even dilute the process.
Mm. Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean you have to be like tight-lipped and stiff-necked and not engage with your students at all, or not tell them anything about your life at all, or anything of that sort. But to know that there is
A
a
boundary.
kind of boundary
Mm. Mhm.
beyond which you wouldn't talk to your students the way you would talk to your besties.
Yes. Mhm.
And very often, this is why besties won't come into your yoga class.
Yes. None of my friends come to yoga. So true. So true. Okay. Okay. No, I'm also of the similar belief that you have to have those boundaries. Don't don't dilute that learning process on either end, for the teacher and for the student. So no, I was wondering, because at least I think my yoga schooling in India, the relationships were a little more formal between teacher and student. I know that's changed a little more now over the years. I think social media has also added to that. But I came from very formal yoga schooling. Like, I remember when the teacher walked in the shalas, pin drop silence.
Yeah.
The moment the teacher stepped in, you didn't even need to see. You could hear the teacher walk in through the door,
You
and
could
we would.
feel it.
Yes, and I think we also did that in school in many ways. When the teacher walked
Yeah.
in, we would silence ourselves a little bit. So I came from that to this world where everybody's hugging their yoga teacher and high-fiving their yoga teacher. It was for me back then, it was a very culturally surprising thing. So from formal teacher-student relationship to a very informal one, and to see where I was in that space, like what was my thing. So just Janasangha reminded me of that.
Yeah. So I think to maintain that the integrity of the learning process, that's the only reason for this.
Mhm.
Right? So going to your next question about the digital detox.
Mhm.
I think social media makes it very, very difficult to do that right now because, your expression is for everybody in the world.
Mm.
And to sort of limit it, to sort of say that I'm very mindful about what I'm trying to communicate and why I'm trying to communicate that gives you a sense of the boundary.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you sort of, again, we make that same mistake, right? When principle and process, we keep saying, okay, we have to post every day, for example.
Mhm.
And then you forget that what you're trying to communicate is the more important thing.
Yes.
And then sometimes you put out your own entire yoga practice out for people to see.
Mm.
Or what your inner thoughts that you are still working with are, you put it out. And then there is a comment, and then there is an engagement, and then there is,
No, and
a
there's also
continuous.
malice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had, not in yoga, but on my dance side, I had an instructor who was there only for the women, you know, and I mean, this person is no longer associated with my dance studio, but was very clear that I would slip into women's DMs and work his way up. And yeah, without going into that ugly story, you know, there's that side too, where you are sometimes you're trying to find friends, you're lonely, you're trying to build your social circle here in America. I notice it happens with Indian people who are trying to build their social circle here because you have nobody, right? And I'm not saying everybody's up to malice like the example I gave you, but you have to recognize that, hey, if you're teaching this, there is that separation.
Yeah.
Mm. Mhm, mhm.
And it's easier to probably do this in other jobs than other than yoga, because I think one of the mistakes that we make in our is like a thought that we don't really contextualize enough, because we're saying yoga is all about life. Yoga teaching is all about everything in life.
Mm.
That cannot happen. There are very strict boundaries. You walk into the teaching space and you walk out of it into your own life.
Mhm, mhm. No, so true. And I've held that boundary till today, like 13 years. Don't go to anybody's Ganesh Chaturthi invite, Diwali invite, some puja invite, some celebration, but I don't go. And I give a very polite reason, but my teachers know that I will not go to social events with students. They are free to go, but I will not be there. Like if they invite students for a potluck in their home, I will not go. And it's not that I'm antisocial. Maybe I am. I don't know. But to me, I don't want them to interact with the non-yoga teacher personality that I have. That's a very private space for me, and I don't want these people there. And it's not that, it's just a boundary. I don't know where I picked it up, but I think it has helped protect my energy. So when all my conversations with them are only about yoga and nothing else in many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I think the most important thing is to find that boundary where we are comfortable for ourselves,
Mm.
right? To sort of make this a voluntary thing.
Mm.
So let's say even if you were to go there, to say, where do I stop?
Yeah.
What makes me comfortable here? And what preserves the integrity of my practice and my paths?
Mm. Mm. True. I like that. What preserves the integrity? So true. Yeah. It would give
So
me
that
more
leads to the
anxiety to go.
last one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
So
Last.
if you're clear about that, then it becomes very easy to know where to draw the line.
Mhm.
The moment the discomfort starts, you say, okay, this is not working for me.
Mhm.
So the last one that Satmarana talks about is laulya, unsteadiness, the
Mm.
quality of not being rooted as a personality, right? You see, all of these things you see, atyahara, indulgence,
Mm.
exertion, talking too much, following the rules too strictly, over socialization.
Mhm.
All of these are dispersing your energy, making you very dispersed, very scattered, very spread thin.
Mm. Mhm.
And without you realizing, you get to a space where you're not feeling like you catch the thread of your own practice all your life.
Mm.
That is the unsteadiness that he talks about. So, what does it manifest as? It manifests as burnout. It
Yes.
manifests as inability to make a decision. So, confusion. Should I do this? Should I do that? What should I focus on?
Mm.
The inability to actually understand what is a principle in your life and what is not.
Yes. You will also show up and teach scattered things, scattered concepts. One day you are here, the next day you are somewhere else, and there's no foundation that's being laid for the student either. Mm. Mhm.
Right? And
Mhm.
in your own yoga learning, what it does is that it makes you not stay with a practice long enough for you to actually derive the essential learnings.
So who helps with this, Medha? Like if I'm unsteady as a teacher, is it my responsibility? How much of it is the teacher's responsibility to notice and point out? But for that, you should even have a relationship with the teacher. How does one catch themselves for all of
I
this?
think I think primarily as a yoga student, I believe that the responsibility to craft your path is on you because you are the one who is the beneficiary of this entire process. Now,
Mhm.
if you do have input, you think of it as a blessing.
Mm.
If you have people who are helping point out things that you can't see,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
consider yourself absolutely lucky
Mm.
and take it. One of the mantras of the Rig Veda, I mean, shlokas of the, I don't know what do you call it, one of the Sanskrit, this one of the Rig Veda says, let good ideas come from wherever they may. I will take it and I will learn from it.
Mm.
Right? So if you do have that input, great. But if you don't,
Mhm.
then one of the ways to find out that you are feeling unsteady, it is a feeling, right? Like burnout is something that is ubiquitous. You're feeling like you're putting so much effort, you're going in so many different spaces and trying to do so much, but it is not actually accruing to a result,
Yes. Mhm.
right? Naturally, you feel always tired.
Mm.
You feel indecisive.
Mhm.
You feel you're not able to understand. You're putting more effort to go through this process.
Mm. Mm.
And you're feeling shaky. At that point, you sort of have to sort of take out remove the wheat from the chaff
Mm. Mhm.
and say, do I really need this chaff? What am I
Mm.
running behind? Where am I losing my energy?
Mhm.
Do I need something like a practical lifestyle alteration? Do I need to take on a little less?
Yes.
Do I need to focus on the questions that I have that need to be resolved right now?
Mhm.
Do I need to learn with a particular teacher who I think can help me? Do I
Yes.
need a one on one class?
Mm.
Do I need a philosophy class? Do
Mhm.
I need a practice class?
Mhm.
And I will give myself enough time to commit to this for it to change my being. I won't go for like a month. I can say I will try for a significant amount of time, whatever that feels right for you, depending on how what is causing that unsteadiness. But until that, I will not give up on this idea that I have. This is an experiment, but I have to give it time for it to mature.
True.
I will stay with the discomfort.
Mhm. Fair.
So practically, I feel like life has a way of teaching us everything that we need to know. It's just that we're
Mhm.
not sensitive to most of these things, and these things are happening to us.
Mhm. Mhm.
So one of the things that I tell my YTT 200 guys is anything that is making you shrink is a very instant feeling.
Mm.
Inside feels shrunken.
Mm.
That is a time for you to stop and see what's happening.
I think it is You said this earlier in the conversation, that you have to be aware of, you said it, I think, in taking on more than you can handle in prayasa. Like, you have to be aware of how much you're spreading yourself thin. And I think we do that even in learning yoga. We learn too much.
Yes.
And we're constantly in that search for more. But till you apply it, you will constantly be in that search. So, what's on the other side, Medha? If these are all the please don't do, what are the
Yeah.
please do?
Yeah. So this is definitely a better, more positive conversation as it shifts because, when I first learned this felt like an attack on my personality. And it felt like the Badhaka Tattvas felt like, oh my God, I'm doing every one of this. And I have to really change a lot of how I'm
Uh,
doing this. And I feel like each time I go back, I still feel the same thing.
mhm.
And there are always so many layers to learning this
Of
and
course.
applying this.
Mhm.
So I think one of the things that before we jump into the Sadhaka Tattvas that we have to do is we have to say that it's fine.
Mhm.
If we knew better, we would be better.
Mhm.
It's okay if it takes time for us to come out of these patterns that already are very rooted in our lives.
Mhm.
And this is a process. So let's be kind to ourselves
Yes. And don't do all of them at once.
at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. So the Sadhaka Tattvas, again, he lays out six. He says Utsaha, Sahasa, Dhairya, Tattvajnana, Drida Nischaya, and Janasanga Parityaga. So Utsaha is enthusiasm,
Mm.
Josh, as they would say, right?
Mm.
To be excited to do the practice.
Mm.
I think, when I think about it, I always think about your podcast because you're always so, I'm sure it's not easy for you to get on, conversations with so many people. You have your own learnings that you share on the podcast. But like one thing that comes through all the time is that you have a very good time doing it and you look forward to it.
Mhm.
Now, imagine if our entire yoga practice became like that,
Mhm.
right? Where you're like, oh my God, I cannot wait to
Mhm.
discover this part of me.
Mhm.
It's like a whole bunch of sunshine that's covering your
Yes.
entire
And it
mat
makes it
and
easier.
practice, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. We are selfish people. Things that we like to do, we want to do more and more.
Mhm.
So if you're excited about yoga practice, you will show up better.
True.
It doesn't even take effort.
True. 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 So true.
But again, it doesn't mean that if you're excited about yoga, you will always be excited every single day,
Mhm.
right? There are ups and downs. But
Yes.
on an overall level, if you are really looking forward to this process of self refinement and understanding what you're all about, then
Mhm.
it becomes easier to glide over the rough edges.
Mhm.
The second one he says is sahasa, courage. Because there's so many parts of you that you don't know about yourself that you have to discover.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is as simple as, oh, I didn't even know I could do a headstand. I didn't know that I could do the headstand away from the wall.
It's also courage to come knowing that somehow you are behind in the process. I'll give you this very simple example. Say you are the most inflexible person on the planet, or so you think. Okay. And you can't touch your toes in Uttanasana or even go halfway. So you could potentially feel very defeated, right? And then there is a lack of courage to come back. So
Yeah.
I think that also plays into this one.
Yes, very much. And so this is why I think there's a lot of people who think that yoga is not for the weak hearted in that sense.
Mm. Mm.
Because you see your own personality out on display
Reality,
on your mat.
your
Yeah.
realities. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And that's not always fun.
Mhm. So true. Mhm.
And third one, it sort of leads into that, right? So what you were talking about is dhairya, perseverance, or the tolerance of the difficulty or the diffidence that we face.
I see where you're going. Okay. Mm.
So sahasa is the courage to face new things because
Mhm.
new things are scary.
Yes. Yes.
And dhairya is the tolerance of things that you see about yourself in the present moment, which are not things that you like very much.
Mm. Okay. Mm.
right? So let's say in a physical practice, because very easy, right? On your mat, you have all of these things playing out and you can pick up that thread as an exemplification very easily. But in the context of life, it is a little bit more nuanced,
Mm.
right? So, for example, if I am trying to do Uttanasana and I'm not able to touch my toes, to sort of stay there at the point where I can stay, where it has started to hurt, where I still feel all of these things about myself, and say, I'm just going to trust the process now.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
And just at that moment, when you make that decision to trust that process, you feel your body ease.
Yes. Mhm.
You feel more resilient. You feel more like there's more space to tolerate it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is the practice of the idea.
So true.
To
So true.
accept yourself,
Mhm. And
right?
that is a
The
constant
next,
process.
yes,
Mm.
yes. And I think this is also why Satmarama has put all of these as Sadhaka Tattvas. So you keep building this attitude more and more.
Mm.
It's like I said, each time you visit it, you find different levels or layers to the same practice.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
It's not like a one time I've ticked this,
It's
I've
never
practiced the
ending.
idea and
Yeah,
it's
it's never
done.
ending.
The next one is Tattvagnana. Tattvagnana is the discriminative ability of your own mind to sort of say that this and this are two separate things. They're not similar. They are- I think as a yoga teacher, especially, I find this happen a lot where, you have a, most of us without engaging in the process very well, we have this tendency to make broad statements, oh, generalizations, big ideas which sort of cover everything. There's no nuance to it. So committing to understanding the details
Mm.
of the reality of what we're doing is Tattvagnana,
I can see so many examples
right?
of that here in America where there are so many mm, yoga educators who do this umbrella level learning, but there is so much missing context. Mhm. Mhm.
So again, going back to principle and process, sort
Mm.
of having equal or specialized understanding of both. I'm trying to do this,
Mhm.
but I cannot be talking only in principle because the process of life is grainy.
Yes. Mhm. Mhm.
The process of yoga is also grainy. You cannot say yoga makes you healthy
Mhm.
without actually doing the practice of yoga.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is where, also there is a critique between a scholar of yoga versus a practitioner of yoga. A
Mm.
scholar knows, but a practitioner does. Unless both of them come into the same person,
Mhm.
this is not going to be transmitted.
Understood. Mhm. Beautiful. Mhm.
Right? And the next one is Dhrida Nischaya, firm resolve, unwavering commitment to practice, believing that this will help you. It will
Mhm.
not help you because you're doing Uttanasana, Trikonasana, Pranayama, and meditation.
Mhm.
It will help you because you are in the process where you're communicating with yourself and trying to refine yourself.
Mm.
Staying committed to it, even when things get difficult.
Yes. Yes. Mhm. I cannot tell you how many times I have told people, don't wait for the perfect condition. This is the condition.
Yes.
Go with it. Don't wait for calendar to clear up, children to grow up. There are no guarantees. And when you have time, this studio may disappear. This teacher may disappear.
Yeah.
You and I may physically disappear, right? Like we might, our time, you never know. We think we'll be around till 80 years old. We don't know. So yes, I like that. Don't wait.
And the last one is Janasanga Parityaga. I think we've spoken a lot about Janasanga in the Badhaka Tattvas. So he says, avoid it, then that will become a thing that practices, that nurtures your practice.
Mhm. Mhm. Can you also nurture it by going into Janasanga that is like your yoga community?
Yes, you can, but that is also a limited kind of engagement
Mm.
because, of course, you derive a lot of strength from your yoga community. And as this yoga community is a sangha that sort of nourishes each other, then there is nothing better. because you feel like you are with a bunch of people who are trying to do the same thing, and it
Mhm.
becomes easier, right?
You
And I
feel more
think that
seen.
this would, yeah, and this is
Mm.
what happens typically in YTT cohorts, right? Especially if it's a small cohort, then a deep engagement. Everybody knows what each other is struggling with, and it can become a very positive influence. But
Mhm.
at some point, even that has to withdraw into your own space where you're doing this practice.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Do we have all the sadhaka, badhaka and sadhaka tattvas? Is there anything left?
That is about it. This is a
Okay.
lot to work with already.
It is. It is. And I like, how you said at some point that this is an ongoing process
Yes.
and there are layers to it. You'll bump into nuances of it. And over time, it should I use this word in trainings a lot, that you have to get to a point where it's second nature. You don't
Yes.
go to the practice, you practice. You don't have to make yourself do it, you just do. And that needs time, dedication, and all the other things that you mentioned on the do and do not list, and then some more.
I think the way I have begun to think about it is from doing to being,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? And in this being process or even the doing process, perfection has such a small role to play.
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea of perfection, as you're
Doesn't
doing
exist.
more and more, just changes. The goalpost constantly changes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what we think of as, oh, if I get to that level, that is the perfect thing.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
moment you start doing it, it's already changed.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is really no value in holding yourself to a particular standard. There is a lot of value in doing the process to uncover the principle.
Yes, yes. So true. I want to be aware of your time, but I want to say one thing. You said doing to being. I have quietly in my head joke this, but I don't say it out loud. Here I will. I think there's another state. There is seeing before doing. And
Yes.
sometimes we are looking at things from the outside. We're not even in
Yeah.
the doing stage. And so there is the seeing, doing, and then the being. But that is something I don't echo out loud sometimes, because I'm like, no, guys, you're still
But I
seeing
think
it.
you
You're not,
should. That's a great observation.
you're just seeing it from the outside. First, then you get to doing and then being. But yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts here, Medha, as we wrap this up?
I think that this is, like I told you before, like we discussed, I think being very honest with yourself, but also
Mhm.
earnest in this process,
Mm.
you know, and saying, yeah, I'm imperfect. And that's fine.
Mhm.
Nobody is putting me on a pedestal except myself. And pedestals are actually quite boring.
Mm.
Life is quite messy,
Mhm.
and I'm just trying to find my way through this in the best way possible.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that means sometimes I need to make space to fail.
Okay.
Because if I don't know where I'm failing,
Mhm.
what can I fix?
Mhm. Mhm. And that'll take us into the whole ego conversation, which I will save for another day. Thank you so much, Medha. As always, this has been very helpful, very insightful, and I'm sure the listeners will be making their own list of Badhaka and Sadhaka Tattvas and seeing where they land. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Aru. It was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find all the resources and links at letstalk.yoga/listen. Please remember, if you enjoyed this conversation, to rate and review this podcast. And remember, you can watch the video conversations on our YouTube channel called Aham Yoga. I will see you next week with another conversation. Until then, take care. Bye bye.